stared out of her window into the night, feeling completely devastated and heartbroken over Lincoln's accident. It had been a few hours since she and the rest of her family returned home from the hospital, and Luan felt more restless than she'd ever been in her life. Luan couldn't understand why everyone else was able to sleep peacefully after everything that had happened, because she certainly wasn't able to. Because of her April Fool's pranks, Lincoln had been reduced to a vegetative state for the rest of his life, and would also never walk again because of his shattered spine. For the last hour, Luann had reflected on all of her previous April Fool's pranking sprees and how reckless he realized they had all really been. The prank traps he had used the year Ronnie Ann had been invited to the Loud House could have badly hurt Lincoln or Ronnie Ann had they not been so lucky, but the incident at the hotel was probably the most reckless and dangerous pranking spree Luann had ever done. Her entire family could have gotten badly hurt or even killed had Luann not made precise calculations to the pranks set up in the hotel. Last year's April Fool's Day had been more damaging to her family's reputations rather than their health. Because of the actions performed by stunt actors, it took almost a year to undo the damage done to the reputations of Luann's family members, and Luann swore at the end of every April Fool's Day that that'd be the last time she'd prank her family. Yet even after all that, Luann still continued to go back on her word and pull pranks on her family every April Fool's Day, and now her only brother was a shell of his former self because of it. Lan wondered why she even did all of that to her family to begin with. She had just been trying to spread her joy of the April Fool's tradition each year, but she never even took any consideration to what her parents and siblings thought about it, nor how it made them feel. Lan was the only person who enjoyed pranking others on April Fool's Day, yet the rest of her family absolutely hated it with a passion. Although her parents never really took a stand against her, Lincoln had finally decided that he'd taken enough of Luann's pranks and took a stand against her for his parents. He even recalled Lincoln's reaction when he saw his stuffed rabbit Bun Bun half destroyed from the explosive party ball in his room, and this thought brought tears to Luann's eyes. He had been emotionally hurt and angered from seeing his best friend blown to pieces, and Luann had just laughed at all of it, thinking it was funny. She had broken his heart, and for what? Just to get a laugh out of it? If Luann had any sense at all, she would have stopped the pranking when she had the chance, but it was too late for that now. The damage had been done, and now Lincoln would suffer from Luann's recklessness for the rest of his life, and so would her family. Luann wondered if Lincoln even still remembered Bunman at all due to his memory loss, or any of the events that led him to the hospital for that matter. It really hurt Luann to think that that was the last thing Lincoln might have remembered before becoming crippled by the fallen fridge. Due to the brain damage, however, Luann wasn't sure if he'd remember it, at least not at first. Yet if he did, she could only hope Lincoln would forgive her, if he was still capable of doing so. But Luann also remembered that strange look Lincoln gave her when she made direct eye contact with him. Was it possible that seeing her in such a sorrowful and remorseful state somehow sparked something in his memory? Did Lincoln know what Luann had done? Did he recognize her again? Luann couldn't be sure if that was the case, or perhaps it was just some uncontrolled reaction he was experiencing. She was no expert in brain psychology, but if Luann had to guess, Lincoln was probably aware of her appearance and trying to recall who she was. Yet due to the amount of brain damage he suffered, Lincoln was having a hard time doing so. But if that were the case, why did he look at Luann the way he did at that exact moment? It didn't make much sense to her, yet it made very little difference now as it was. Luann just sighed and turned away from the window, wondering why she always pranked her family the way she did. What drove her to do what she did every April Fool's Day? Luann remembered the first time she had ever pranked her family on April Fool's Day back when she was only 9 years old. She had snuck several stink bombs under the bed into her parents' room, which went off once they sat down on it. In her siblings' rooms, Luann had hung buckets of water balloons above their doors, which splattered all over them once they opened them. Of course, she had gotten scolded for making a mess and for stinking up her parents' room with stink bombs, but her parents let her off easy since it was April Fool's Day. However, as the years progressed, Luann's pranks began to take a more distasteful approach. When she turned 10, Luann pulled off another April Fool's prank on her family by sneaking 3 wild skunks into the house, which stank up the place so badly that the family had to stay in a hotel for several days. She got grounded for a week because of it. Age 11 was around the point where Luan really started getting more reckless and rambunctious with her pranks, and from there on, they continued on and on every year. Despite all the times Luan had promised that she'd ease up and stop pranking her family and other people around her, it never happened, even after the hotel incident. That year was the year Luan had promised her father that the family would be prank free for the next several years as he bought out a hotel for her to quote unquote pull off the biggest April Fool's prank of all time. Luan had definitely succeeded in doing just that, but even after that, she still went back on the promise that she had made with her father. Deep down, she knew that it was wrong, but her addiction to comedy and pranking had gotten the better of her, and she broke her 10-year prank-free promise because of it. Dad practically bankrupted us just to purchase the land for that fake clown camp in the hotel, Luan thought pitifully. I should have just stopped at that point like I promised, but Luan felt the guilt with her grow even worse as he thought about just how much damage her pranking sprees have really cost the family each year. It had taken a long time for her parents to financially recover from the year that Luan forced Lynn Sr. into buying the land for her fake clown camp and the hotel, and her prank props weren't cheap either. But the following April Fool's year was probably the most damaging of all, apart from today. Because of the actions performed by the stunt actors posing as the Loud family, all of Royal Woods believes that Luan's parents and siblings were the real culprits behind all of the mischief and tricks that the stunt actors performed, causing her family's reputation to be severely damaged. It was so bad that the actors actually had to issue apologies to the Loud family and to Royal Woods a few days after April Fool's Day. And yet again, Luan swore never to prank anyone ever again. But she went back on that oath like always. However, Luan did try to take things a bit easier this April Fool's Day by pranking her family the original way, which was with the use of prank traps. She believed that after all the other times she pranked her family, they deserved a small break. But that didn't mean she'd stop pranking them altogether. Pranking was like a drug addiction to Luan, and it was all too ingrained in her mind to see any way out. Thinking back on all of it now, Luan realized how foolish she had been all these years doing what she had done every April Fool's Day. Her actions at the hotel 2 years ago had placed her family in danger. The stunt actor incident the previous year damaged their reputations, and now Luan had ended up severely injuring and crippling her only brother because of her addiction to pranking. Lincoln was always the man with the plan, but now he'd never be that same person anymore. He'd be lucky if he could ever even speak properly again, yet alone make any real progression regarding his mindset due to the extreme brain damage he suffered from being almost crushed to death by a heavy refrigerator. Although Lincoln could clearly still speak, he was incapable of pronouncing words correctly, though it was clear that he still understood what others were saying and had tried to form intelligible words. Yet his speech was greatly impaired due to the damage done to the Broca's area of his brain. This was the part of the brain that allowed a person to produce speech. Luan had indeed caused irreversible damage, not only to Lincoln but to her whole family as well. Her comedic career no longer mattered to her at this point anymore, nor was it fun any longer. It had turned into something horrible and frightening because of her recklessness, and Luan began to wish that she had never chosen comedy as a career path. If she had just chosen a different career path when she was younger, Lincoln wouldn't have suffered the way he did that day. What have I done? Luan lamented softly, feeling the urge to cry once more as he headed out of the room towards the bathroom. But as he was about to enter it, she stopped when she noticed something, or rather, heard something. Luan heard Lori and Lenny speaking in their room and slowly approached the door to the room, not wanting to attract any attention. It was around 11:30 p.m. and everyone was asleep, so Luan couldn't understand why those two were still awake. When she made it to the door, she stopped as she heard Lenny speaking to Lori. Lori, that's insane! We can't do that, Lenny protested. And why shouldn't we? Luan deserves it for all the heck she put us through every year on April Fool's Day. Look what happened to Lincoln because of her darn pranking addiction. He's been reduced to a vegetable, and you're basically telling me that you're feeling sympathy for Luan? Lori snapped angrily. Lori, you think I'm not angry at Luan? Is that it? Well, if that's what you think, then you're wrong, Lenny shot back. I hate what she did as much as everyone else. But that doesn't mean we should go around trying to get even with Luan just because he made a small mistake. Small mistake? You call nearly killing our brother a small mistake. Darn it, Lenny, you're 19 years old now. Are you still that naive? Luan messed up big time. And why do you think that is? It's because we allowed her to do these things and just get away with it all these years. And see, he's 17 years old and still acts like a rambunctious teenager on pixie dust. Like Mom and Dad said, we acted like cowards and just hid from Mulan rather than take a stand and put a stop to her pranking sprees. And now look where Lincoln is because of our cowardness, Lori hissed. But Mom and Dad are doing that now, Lenny argued. Land's stranded for the rest of the year, and they've banned comedy and pranking in this house forever, so we don't have to worry about her pulling any fast ones on us ever again. Besides, Luan's really traumatized and upset by everything that happened to Lincoln because of her, so she's not likely to be pulling pranks again anytime soon. Lenny, do you honestly believe Luan will do that? I guarantee you that once all this blows over and the year ends, she'll find ways to pull rank us again, and you know it, Lori said with a frustrated sigh. I don't believe that, Lori, Lenny disagreed. Luan swore at the hospital that she'd never prank anyone ever again, and this time, given what happened to Lincoln, I think she really means it. Luan was under a lot of pressure at the time, but I don't honestly believe that, Lori replied. She said that so many times before, but she always went back on her word. Luan promised Dad after the hotel incident that she'd give us all a prank-free decade. And what does she do? She just blows it off and continues on with her darn pranks every chance she gets. Luan has no self-control when it comes to this kind of thing. Pranking is like a drug addiction to her, and it almost cost Lincoln his life. Luan felt tears running down her face as she listened to Lori ramble on about everything she'd done, and she knew in her heart that Lori was right about all of it. I know, but Mom and Dad are finally taking a stand, so why should we worry about Luan now? She won't prank us or anyone else because of restrictions they set in place, Lenny wondered. For how long, Lenny? How long do you think Luan will go a year from now before she gets the insatiable urge to break these new rules and prank someone else? Like our friends, or her own friends behind our backs. If Luan does do that, she can end up sending them to the hospital like Lincoln, Lori replied. Or if worse comes to pass, she might even end up putting someone in the coroner's vault. Heck, that's where Lincoln just might have ended up. Inside a body bag, stuffed in the coroner's freezer, and we'd be planning his funeral arrangements right now if the EMTs arrived at our house too late. Did you even think to consider that, Lenny? To be honest, no, Lenny replied, but that doesn't mean I wasn't fearing for Lincoln's life after that fridge fell on him. I honestly thought he was a goner, but by some stroke of miraculous luck, Lincoln survived and he'll live. Yeah, he survived all right, but you heard the doctor. Lincoln's going to be in a wheelchair the rest of his life, and he'll be brain damaged as well, bad enough to the point of having to be basically babied forever. I wouldn't exactly call that living, Lenny. Dr. Lloyd even said so himself, Lori retorted flatly. Sighing, Lenny asked, what's your point in all of this? My point, Lenny, is that we need to really get through to Luan just how bad this really is. I don't believe that grounding Luan and depriving her of her comedic career will be enough to get her to stop. I know we're not her parents, but this needs to be done, and Lisa agrees with it as well, Lori answered. But I still don't think it's a good idea, Lenny objected. I'm perfectly aware of what it does, Lenny. Lisa knows too, Lori interrupted. But she's willing to do it, and I'm pretty sure it will send a clear enough message to Luan to never pull another prank in this house or anywhere else ever again. Luan had no idea what to make of this. What was all this talk about negative effects and such? And what did Lisa have to do with any of it? It became clear, though, that the three of them were most likely planning a way to get even with her for what had happened to Lincoln, and this struck fear into Luan. This caused her to have all sorts of fears of what they'd do to her behind their parents' backs. Was Lisa possibly planning to torture her with some experimental drug? Or perhaps they were planning to drag her into the basement and beat her to a pulp? Luan knew that these thoughts sounded mind-numbingly stupid, but given the current circumstances, she couldn't help but imagine the worst. Luan was almost tempted to enter the room and tell Lori and Lenny how sorry she was and that she'd never prank anyone ever again, but she'd already done that so many times before that she lost count, and doubted that they'd believe her. Luan just headed back for her room, stopping short of when she saw the door to Lincoln's room wide open. She felt the urge to cry again, as she just stood in the center of the hall, staring into the empty room ahead of her. And part of Luan's mind wanted to assure her that Lincoln was safe in his room, tucked in bed and fast asleep, but she knew that she was only fooling herself. Luan knew that Lincoln was far away from here in a hospital room, a cell of his former self. That was the cold, hard truth that Luan couldn't challenge in any way. She walked up to the doorway, leading into Lincoln's small room, and felt the tears coming on as he entered it. As Luan stared at Lincoln's empty bed, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Lincoln. This is all my fault. Why did I have to pull all those pranks? I don't care about any of it anymore. I just want you back." She finally broke down crying as she fell to her knees in front of Lincoln's empty bed, filled with unspeakable remorse for what she'd done to Lincoln and for all the pranks he'd pulled over the years on her family. Luan didn't know what to do now or how to face her family anymore after doing what she had done. There was no doubt in her mind that her entire family probably hated her guts for all the pranks and deceptions he'd pulled on them every year on April Fool's Day. This was also a day that Luan could never enjoy again in her life. April Fool's Day had always been her most favorite holiday of all time, but after what happened to Lincoln, Luan would never see April Fool's Day the same way ever again. This day would always serve as a tragic reminder to Luan of what she'd done to her brother and how her reckless actions almost sent him to the coroner's vault. Every April Fool's Day would now be the day in which Luan would be forever haunted with the revelation of almost claiming the life of the only brother she had with her reckless pranking spree. In hindsight, Lincoln might as well be dead due to the fact that his brain was so badly damaged that he'd be a vegetable for the rest of his life, never to live out whatever dreams he might have had for his future. As Luan sobbed on the floor near Lincoln's bed, the door to Lori and Lenny's room opened up. Lori stepped out into the hall to see what the source of all the noise in Lincoln's room was and saw Luan bawling her eyes out in front of Lincoln's bed. "Luan? Luan?" Lori exclaimed. "What's going on?" "What's going on, Lori?" Lenny asked, stepping out into the hall. "It's Lan," Lori pointed out. "Looks like she's having a breakdown over what she did to Lincoln. I can't really blame her, not after everything that's happened." "Nor can I," Lenny said. "Maybe we should speak with Lan, maybe try and comfort her." "If you want to do that, be my guest," Lori said, glancing briefly at Lan. "But I'm not going to be a part of it. I've no desire to show her sympathy after what she's done." "Lori, I don't like what Luan did any more than you do, but that doesn't mean we should treat her like the scum of the earth. She's still our sister, and the fact is that Luan really didn't intend to hurt Lincoln, so act a bit more civilized, if you please," Lenny scolded. "Oh, so you're lecturing me now on how to behave, is that it?" Lori demanded. "No, I'm only—" Lenny paused with a frustrated sigh, then said, "You know what, Lori, I'm done with this. Do what you want, hate her all you want, but I'm going to help Luan whether you like it or not." "Then so be it." Lori snapped and walked back into her room and pulled the door shut behind her. Sighing, Lenny walked into Lincoln's room and up to Luan, who was still sobbing. She reached out and placed her hand on Luan's shoulder, startling her. "Lenny?" Lance stuttered, wiping tears from her face. "Hey, Lan, I heard you in here. You okay?" Lenny asked, trying to act casual. "Does it look like I'm okay? Of course I'm not okay. Lincoln's a vegetable because of me." Lan snapped, glaring at Lenny with puffy eyes. "I don't need you to comfort me if that's your intention. I get it. You all hate me for what I did to Lincoln, so if you've come in here just to berate me, just do it and get lost." Lenny didn't know exactly what to say as Luan wiped tears from her face. She understood that Luan felt sorry for what had happened to Lincoln, yet she still couldn't fully forgive her. A part of Lenny told her to have pity on Luan, but while another part of her urged her to just forget about Luan. But Lenny didn't know what to choose. What Luan had done was very serious indeed, but Lenny knew deep down that it was only an accident and that she never intentionally wanted to hurt Lincoln. But even so, it would be a very long time before anyone would be able to forgive Luan entirely due to the severity of what she had caused and the horrible impact it would have on both Lincoln and the rest of the Loud family. This wasn't just some simple accident like a broken arm or leg or arm, no. She had severely injured Lincoln, paralyzed him from the waist down, and had reduced his mind to a state of mental retardation because of her reckless behavior. This was something that could never be easily forgiven, especially because Lincoln would end up having to be cared for like a baby or elderly person in a convalescent home for the rest of his life, never to live his normal life the same way ever again. "Lan," Lenny sighed, "I'm not here to do any of that. I'm just concerned about why you're in here, that's all. It's almost midnight, after all." I'm just—" Lan didn't know what to say. I'm so worried about Lincoln. What if something happens to him while he's recovering in the hospital? What if, what if he dies because of me? Lenny walked up and embraced Luan tightly, feeling truly sorry for her for the first time since Lincoln's life-crippling accident. Luan, Lincoln's a very strong guy. I'm pretty sure he'll pull through, she assured Luan. I know that Lincoln won't be the same again, and I'm not exactly happy about that, but I'm glad that he survived at least. Uh, I know, Lance sniffed, hugging Lenny. I understand if you don't forgive me. I know none of you might really forgive me for what happened to Lincoln. But I just hope that you'll forgive me for all the years I pranked you and broke my promises to stop pranking every April Fool's Day. I'm truly sorry about all that, and you and Lori were right. Pranking was like a drug addiction to me. If I just kept my word and stopped the pranking after the hotel incident. Lenny felt a slight pang of surprise rush through her when Luan said that. She realized that Luan must have overheard her and Lori talking in her room earlier, meaning that she must have also heard about their talk about that thing. You heard all that? Lenny asked Luan with a slight bit of worry in her voice. Yes, I did, Luan nodded. I was heading for the restroom when I heard the two of you speaking to each other. What is this thing that you're planning to do to me? Lenny wasn't sure how to respond to this, but she had to think of a way to keep Luan in the dark on the subject. She was also having second thoughts on helping Laura and Lisa go through with the secret plan of theirs. It was just too cruel. Luan didn't deserve it, even after everything she'd done to both Lincoln and her whole family. It's nothing, Luan, Lenny lied. It was just something that Laurie suggested, but Lisa was against it. What was it? Just tell me, Luan insisted. See, Lisa and Laurie wanted to prank you back for everything you've done, but they were having second thoughts about it at the last moment, Lenny replied, knowing that what she was saying was a lie. I don't believe you. I heard Laurie say that Lisa agrees with whatever you're planning to do to me, and I know it's not just some prank. Lance snapped. What's Lisa planning to do? Torture me? Drug me? Lenny began before, but got cut off. Do you think I'm just going to break the rules after this year ends up and going back to pranking? Is that it? If that's what you, Lori, and Lisa think, then you're wrong. Lynn yelled. I know I've broken my promises to stop pranking each year, but I mean it this time when I say I'm never doing it again. After what happened to Lincoln, I don't even like the idea of pranking anybody anymore. Not after all that's happened. I believe you, Luan, then he said in a comforting voice, but Lori and Lisa just won't accept it, no matter what I say to them. Trust me, though, when I say that I won't let them do anything bad to you. I'll speak with Lori and Lisa about it and try to talk some sense into them. But just understand that they're scared and people don't tend to act rationally when they're scared. Lan had Lan felt a sense of relief knowing Lenny would stand up for her despite everything she'd done. It was completely understandable that everyone in the family would be fearing for Lincoln's life as he lay in the hospital recovering from his grueling injuries, and that they'd also be showing a lot of contempt towards Lan for sending Lincoln there in the first place. Yet Lan had not considered the possibility that one of her sisters would try to get even with her, though she should have expected it. Luan had, after all, pranked the whole family every year and put Lincoln in the hospital with a broken spine and serious brain damage, so it was only natural that her sisters would want to get back at Luan for all of it. She embraced Lenny again, then said, Thank you, Lenny. I promise that I'll be a better person from now on, and I truly mean it. I won't prank anyone ever again, and I give you my word on that. I can't let what happened to Lincoln happen again. I know you will, Luan. Lenny smiled, warmly embracing Luan. You should get some sleep now, and don't worry about what Lori said. I'll make sure she and Lisa don't try anything funny. Yeah, I feel a bit tired now, Lance said. I should hit the sack now. Me too, Lenny replied, heading out of the room. Lan followed her out to the hall after taking one last glance at Lincoln's room, and she headed off back to her bedroom. Once Lan was in her room, Lenny entered the room to find Lori sitting on her bed, still awake. Lori, we need to talk, Lenny said firmly. About what? Lori asked. About this so-called plan that you and Lisa thought up, Lenny replied. It isn't necessary, and it's cruel. I just spoke with Luan, and I'm very convinced that she won't break her word this time. Well, I'm not convinced, and neither is Lisa, Lori said flatly. You think just because Luan broke down sobbing, she's going to keep her word? Lenny at this point began to lose her cool and said in an angry voice, Lori, what is wrong with you? What's it going to take to get it through your head that Luan actually means what he says this time? Nothing will, Lenny. I'm sorry to say this, but after everything that darn prankster has done to us, I can't believe anything that she says, Lori has. So that's how it is, then. Well, then. Lenny stepped up to Lori's bed and glared aggressively at her. I'll just let Mom and Dad know about your secret little plan in the morning. Go right ahead. It's not like they'll give a crap about it. They're just as angry at Lynn as the rest of us are, Lori thought. Lenny felt even angrier than before. The eldest sister in the family was acting like an unreasonable, senseless child, and Lenny was tired of it. Worst of all, she didn't even care if her parents found out about whatever it was she and Lisa had planned for Luan. You know what, Lori? I'm through with all this nonsense of yours. Until you can learn to act more civilized, you can sleep in here alone. I'll sleeping in the living room. Lenny snapped, and stormed out of the room with a pillow and blanket in her arms. Whatever, Lori muttered before setting the lamp off, bathing the room in darkness. As Lenny headed towards the stairs, he set her blanket and pillow down near the door leading to Lisa and Lily's room, then gently pushed the door open to see Lisa standing near the window, holding something in her hands. Lenny moved slowly through the room and as to try and not wake up Lily, and tapped Lisa on the shoulder, catching her attention. What, Lenny? What are you doing in here? Lisa asked, obviously not expecting to see anyone in the room. You better come outside. We need to talk, Lenny answered in a very serious voice. Lisa frowned at Lenny's serious expression and asked, what such matters of importance could be serious enough that you'd interrupt the solitude of me and my youngest sibling? Lenny glared at Lisa and said in a firm voice, just come outside now. Sighing in frustration, Lisa said, so be it. She bent and followed Lenny outside the room and closed the door behind her, and asked Lenny what she wanted. Lori told me everything about your little invention that you plan to use on Luan, and I'm here to tell you that you better call it off, or I'll be letting Mom and Dad know about it, Lenny answered in a serious tone. Lisa's expression changed from that of annoyance to that of a person who had just been caught with their pants down, and she knew that she had been busted. So, Lori told you about that? Lisa said in a defeated tone. Yes, he did. And I want to know just what in the world were you thinking? Why the heck would you even consider doing something like that? Lenny demanded harshly. Lisa was silent for a few seconds before speaking up again, sounding more serious. Lan hurt our brother very badly, Lenny. I can't allow such a thing like that to slide. Lisa replied with a hint of malice in her voice. Mom and Dad are handling it, Lisa. We don't have to worry about Luan breaking the rules anymore. And besides, Luan was sobbing with remorse just a while ago in Lincoln's room over what he did. So there's no reason to do what you're planning to do. Just let it go, Lisa. Lenny shot back. What if Luan... Lisa began before Lenny cut off. No what ifs, Lisa. You're not Luan's parent, so stop trying to take matters into your own hands, Lisa. I know you're on edge after everything that's happened. All of us are. That doesn't mean we should go around trying to get even with Luan, and that certainly doesn't give anyone the right to do what you're planning to do, Lenny argued. Lisa paused, not knowing what to say. Instead of inventing devices that mess with people's minds, you should focus on inventing something that might be able to help Lincoln. Something to restore his memory. You're better than this, Lisa. Don't waste your talents by doing something so heartless. Besides, what could you possibly hope to gain from all of this? Land's upset enough already, and you will only make it worse if you do what I know you're planning to do, Lenny lectured. Lisa stared down at the floor, not saying a word. Those ideas had crossed her mind at the hospital, yet her hatred towards Lynn had blinded her from her true goals, leading her astray towards a path that she had never considered going down. However, her fear of Lynn had gotten in the way of her better judgment and caused her to focus more on getting back at Lynn rather than on helping Lincoln. Realizing her mistake, Lisa knew what she had to do. You're right, Lenny. Lisa stammered, now sounding upset. I'm just so worried about Lincoln and so angry at Lynn that I couldn't think of anything else except to get back at her. I just don't know what to do. Lenny was perturbed. She had never seen Lisa this upset before, but she couldn't exactly blame her. Lincoln had been severely injured and nearly killed by Luan's pranks. That was a situation Lisa had never been fully prepared for, so it was understandable that she'd show such emotions, despite being a 7-year-old genius. Lisa was only human after all, and even prodigies like her had emotions. Lenny couldn't help but feel pity for Lisa, despite what she and Lori had planned to do to Luan. Lisa, you're the smartest person in the family, and you're also a good person. Don't do something that you'll regret later in life. I believe in you, and if there's anyone in this family that can help Lincoln and maybe Luan, it's you. Don't use your skills for such evil purposes. Do what's right, Lenny explained in a comforting voice. Lisa looked up at Lenny, who now had tears in her eyes, then embraced her. You're right, Lenny. I'll do what I can. Also, thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come to speak to me, Lisa sniffed, embracing Lenny tightly. Lenny embraced Lisa with a warm smile and said, I'm glad I was able to help. We'll get through this. I know we will. And I believe Lincoln will as well. Lisa get some rest now. Lisa stepped back and said, Yeah, I'm a bit tired as well. I'll see you in the morning, Lenny. You too, Lisa. Lenny nodded, then headed downstairs. Lisa then rushed back into her room with a new plan in mind, and that was to try and save Lincoln. It would take some time, but she believed she could do it, just as Lenny told her.